Okay. I'm looking at a number of things here, and it's like people say criminals always return to the scene of the crime. I would say that's very common, but I wouldn't say that always. Depends how the criminal feels about did they get away with it or not. Are they satisfied? Usually they're not satisfied that they got away with things, especially if law and order is labeling them as criminal to start with, and they need to look for ways to say, hey, I'm innocent, when they're actually not. They need to up their gamesmanship, you know? Sounds familiar. Anyway, after reading an abstract here that I've been struggling to read through, um, by there's a phenomena of the criminal's return to scene crime, psychological analysis based on FM Dostoevsky's novel. I can't pronounce this. Just call him FM. I'll put a link below. Um, they have an abstract and they're very convoluted how they proceed to explain this, but they did base some theories on Freudianism and reflexology, to why they return, and the applied principles of systemicity, standards of systematic appliance of standards and to predict the return of the criminal to, and how the casualty, pleasure, displeasure kind of fight within in the individual works. Content analysis was applied because context is everything, right? The author uses empirical observations based on their own practical work in law enforcement. So I'll put a link below. You can read the abstract and download that. There's a citation download as well if you want. The scope of application and analysis of the determinants of the return to the crime scene of the main character of the novel, Crime and Punishment. So it was through the applied through the psychoanalysis and reflexology was being undertaken the first time based on the theory of Avi Julov. This whole thing's difficult to read. About the impact of criminal activity on the increase in the mental stress of the criminal, and guided by the theory of Z. Freud on the principle of pleasure, displeasure. The author demonstrates on the example of, these were names, Raskolnikov's behavior. So, first name of that individual stick with, I think, is Rodion, is one of the characters. Rodion, Ras, whatever. I can't, It's I live in the UK. You got typical UK names, not nothing like this. I'm used to the pronunciation I struggle with. So Rodion, they didn't demonstrate an example of Rodion's behavior, that one of the reasons for the return of the criminal to the crime scene is the need to relieve mental stress determined by the consequences of the crime and getting pleasure from the discharge of an overstrained nervous system. This research is important for both theory and law enforcement practice. The psychological analysis of criminal behavior outlined in the article will allow employees whose profession is related to solving crimes to look into criminals' inner world, to predict the consequences of the crime that can be expressed in return to the criminal. Return of the criminal to the crime scene. Conclusions and the analysis of Rodian criminal behavior shows the psychological and criminological nature of Dostoevsky's novel. Can't pronounce these names. It can be argued that in the activity of the criminal after the commission of a crime, there is both conscious and unconscious search for a mental discharge of an overstressed nervous system. People who are like kind of, they see themselves as more spiritual and they're into like spiritual ideas would talk in ways in which they might say anyone who's karmically entangled with something, they always return to that. Basically, anyone who's got an issue with anything, whether they cause the issue or not, they're going to go and return to that thing. Now, where's the scene of the crime actually on through the internet with like drama and people stalking other people and all that? Well, the actual part of this scene is a large part of it is what we don't see. You might get YouTubers release a video and you hear a what was a chat between people, but they made it public anyway, of they're like in cahoots with each other, talking to each other, how they're gonna track down an individual or stalk them or just do things to bring people in to smear campaign them that this is, target a innocent person. And there's the scene of your crime is when they're all in cahoots with each other. The scene of the crime that everybody sees is only like a tip of the iceberg, where the rest of the iceberg is much larger underneath, right? Because criminals don't want to be found out anyway. And when they find out they've been suspected of criminal activity anyway, they will, anybody who's in cahoots with them, anyone who's an acquaintance, a accomplice to the crime with them, they're gonna be sending each other emails and talk about certain people here and there. And I've seen body language responses from some criminal-minded individuals who are very in contempt of court, involving harassing an innocent individual that really had no platform to much to use to respond on or protect themselves on or use to bite back on with, if you will. Yes, all this was over a Facebook group, and just it's really pathetic. Somebody was an admin of a Facebook group and kicked off it, and they just continued to harass that individual because they just it's just really pathetic, all the smear campaigning and so on, because they entered the Facebook group with a idea to expose what the group was all about, right? being that they didn't like the main individual that the group was supposedly supporting. And they're so obsessed with that one individual, and that's not even the one that they're harassing that I'm thinking of. And sure, they're harassing that individual, and it's like they're so obsessed. Why are they obsessed? Why do they keep returning? Because they're scared that they are going to be seen for the criminals that they actually are. So they keep doubling down, trying to play gamesmanship to patchwork this, to try to... It's like putting a band-aid over a wound. They know they're criminal. They know they've been found out. They know they're disgusting in their ways, and they always want their target to be seemingly lower than what they are. So that they fantasize or delude themselves into thinking that they can get away scot-free and go, see, I told you so, that so-and-so was this and that. But it never, of course it never works, because those ideas, those fantasies are based on the fear from inside themselves of being found out that they panicked too much in the first place, perhaps, or were too impulsive in the first place, perhaps. And it's, again, I've used a metaphor for that. It's like a child having a nightmare in the middle of the night, waking up in the middle of the night and seeing maybe there's moonlight coming in, coat is draped over a chair, causing a shadow on a wall somewhere, and it looks like someone's in the corner, and they cry out, see, there's something there, I told you so, and the paranoia builds and builds, and they cry out in the middle of the night. Of course, with a child, any responsible parent would hear them cry out, and they come in, and the light goes on, and when the light's on, it's like, nothing in the corner, nothing there. See, you're being silly. It's just in the shadows. It's just your mind. You got an imagination overactive. It's think this through. What are the chances? And using critical thinking, reasoning, and to calm the child down. Everything's fine. But when grown adults do this, there's going to be something wrong with the critical thinking and analysis of things, the logical deduction of what is the likelihood of there being something in the corner in the shadows versus the likelihood of there actually being something. Or maybe they're just projecting because they like to hide in the shadows because they know they are criminal, but they've gone so far with it that they want to hide that, which makes things worse because it feeds that criminal activity of we hide this and get away with this. Oh, what else can we get away with? Especially if they're very egotistic. So much so that the egotism is like egotism on steroids. What is that? It's narcissism. This is why criminals on platforms like YouTube with stalking individuals and whatever are so damaged, that they're so narcissistic. Because, you know, what is narcissism? I've mentioned it before. What it is, you know, all that lack of self-maintenance disappears in favor of a fantasy of being somebody that now they got this platform in front of them, the YouTube and this and that, and they're getting subscribers, they're getting all these people in their chat, and they bullshit it to them, but they buy it, they believe it. Oh, what else can we do? And I know I convinced them, these people, I'm something that I'm not, and I know I'll be that thing. Yeah, I'll be something and pretend this and blag and grit my way through, rather than actually building on what you've already got with bits of improvement fitting into like bits of a jigsaw puzzle building the character that you already are rather than fantasizing is something you're not. You know, like what comes to mind is that people would just keep doing things that are very fake, plastering loads of layers of fakery, physically as well as the rhetoric, and twisting facts into something to support the fictional character that they are now building, and they see the character and act out the character sometimes to big themselves up to make themselves feel more comfortable and think, oh, they're genius, they're amazing because they've done all this. And to some point, really get blended in their head of thinking that they are that character. This is a very far cry from actually doing small improvements that fit in with the character that is real already, as opposed to suddenly you're all this bigger picture of character. You don't have to work on it. You're this. That's never going to happen and never going to work. And a narcissist who is listening to this is never really going to understand what the fuck I'm talking about. It is kind of difficult, actually, for people who are more genuine, I think, perhaps to think, why would you do that? Well, because they hate themselves. All that lack of self-maintenance got so bad, it has them running away from themselves to that fictional character that they wish they were. What we wish for doesn't happen. We get what we work for, not what we wish for, right? Like somebody would wishing that they could use their YouTube channel and for something like it'd be like a drama thing, and it would actually go to court and use the courts for clout, for views for their YouTube channel, while they continue to pretend to be this character that is weak and pathetic anyway, but they are deluding themselves into thinking that they've convinced the audience that they are this amazing researcher or super sleuth kind of investigator kind of character that slides into communities to discern who's criminal or not. They're just projecting because they are fake to start with themselves, looking for fakers that aren't there because they're just projecting. The same familiar, you know, but one of these individuals might typically use a lot of face filters to try and look their best as well. Maybe even long hair extensions or something, some fake image, right? And the amount of obsession that you see and how they edit the videos to act out in ways that they want you to believe is very telling, especially if you study the body language and things have been said about, oh, you know, return to the scene of the crime. Are you in cahoots with so and so and talking to each other and sending emails? People have said that, and then the opposition on camera you'd see their body language change, look down as if guilty. He's oh, you mean it was about insert name that was being stalked and harassed? You know, you mean you've been talking about so and so? It's about this and that, and they the guilty look down. Yeah, interesting, right? Certainly, if you look at body language, I was talking to a work colleague, actual work colleague, by the way, not anyone online, a colleague with me where I am in my workplace, about the body language things here and there. And he said, oh, maybe people will stop doing this now because of Andrew Tate. It's not that easy, though. If you're confident and you do this cue you're going to do it anyway. It's not like people are going to think, oh, I don't want to do this, and find themselves doing it. And then after the fact, they might think, oh, Andrew Tate does it. But Andrew Tate doesn't do that. He pretends to do that. And what he's doing is this. He's like pressing really hard. But it's not in front of his chest or even leaning forward like I am right now. In his interviews, he's sat back. And it's not this. This gets down below. Presses really hard. Guess who else does this? You're not leaning forward, so you sat back away from your interviewer, distancing yourself. That's very telling. And, Elon Musk does this as well. This is a individual that it's like the pressure in their fingers is like, Andrew, you're going to break your fingers. Andrew Tate is incredibly insecure. But that's a good point. It's just you could look at the body language of certain cues here and there, and those who constantly boast that there's something so altruistic and confident and follow me, come be with me, be like me, if they're doing that, it's because they're not the great promise. I would never tell you to come be like me, you be like you. And if me being like me and you being like you is a good symbiosis, what I do helps you learn and what you do helps me learn, brilliant. It works. And it's the same with, again, pieces of information to build on your real self, slotting in so that bit of information is symbiotic to apply for practical application with everything else you got, rather than being this pathetic idea that and they don't think it's pathetic. They have this fantasy of the super them. You can't wish this into existence. This is why role models don't work. Sure, I will agree, Johnny Depp, how he handled the Amber Heard case, his opposition, very inspired a lot of men. But and some young men wanted to think of, he's so handled this so well. He didn't come back with violence or anything like this. Amber did, of course. And I think great role model, I want to be like them. Johnny is the way he is because of the scars he wears. So you don't want to be that person because you have to go through all the crap that they went through in order to produce that person. It's the last thing you want. Just be your own unique best self that you can be, to the level of awareness that allows you to be in the first place, rather than jumping past your level of awareness with some fantasy of some superior you, that you can always blag your way through something and get away with things. You could even be in contempt of court and still think that you're just going to get away with it because it's you're amazing. That's a fantasy of superiority that doesn't fit with reality, right? And this is what I'm seeing. This is what we have seen on the internet. Again, the psychological analysis, as it says here, of criminal behavior outlined in the article will allow employees whose profession is related to solving crimes to look into criminals' inner world. The inner world is the continuation of running away from themselves and keep the scene of the crime going because they're so worried about that garbage that they become being exposed and the scene of the crime has trinkets of information that exposes them for who they really are. So they keep burying their head in the fantasy of being somebody they're not. This is why they refer to themselves in the third person. Because they know at some level it's a fictional character that they pretending to be, or convince themselves they are that. It's almost like split personality, but not quite. And what drives them past, you get past a point, you get narcissistic, and early narcissism may be fixable, but past the point of, there's a point of no return, I think, because they hate themselves so much that, I like my own company, and I like to be social with other people as well, but I've got to have that me time. What I don't like is just me always, because variety, I want to learn from people. But that's not out of self-hate, it's just out of boredom. But the narcissist is out of self-hate. They hate their own company, and the only way they can escape themselves is try to act like there's somebody that they're actually not. And there's no good doing that if nobody's watching the show. They need an audience. This is why, by the way, narcissists cannot stand being ignored. And yet they'd rather ignore themselves in favor of the fantasy image that they would rather be anyway. That's the one you don't ignore the fantasy image. Feed that fantasy image. They're begging for it. They hate it when you do that, though. They hate it when you can see through it. And they use all kinds of mental gymnastics to say, no, there's nothing wrong with me. It's everybody else. I've heard those words from a family member a lot as well in the past. Yeah, word for word. Nothing wrong with me. I'm fine. When everybody around them saying, shouldn't be doing this or whatever, trying to give them advice. What this does to the brain is erode critical thinking. A narcissist will have very addictive behavior as well, because they're already set up an addiction anyway. That isn't substance abuse, it's actual thought process of how they're using the brain to convince themselves that they're amazing. And when people buy or get duped into thinking that they're by that fictional character, it's like a drug for them, because now you're aiding them to run away from the garbage that they became. It's like looking within and looking at their inner demons. No, not dealing with that. I had inner demons myself, and I faced them on headstrong, because I knew it was the only way to be who I really am, rather than fantasizing about who I'm not. We all go through a little bit of narcissism. I mean, not everybody, but most people, I think. The egotistic, cocky teenager who might walk a certain way and talk a certain way, use slang, and this strutting like this, and is the exaggerated, oh, I'm cool, yeah, way they walk. That's not confidence. That's actually lack of confidence. And you might be a bit of a swagger with subtle confidence, but when it's really, really exaggerated, because they're trying to prove to the world that there's somebody that they are actually not. So that's egotism, but it can be built on and more and more and more until they have this fantasy image. That's narcissism, right? You get past a certain point and it all falls apart. Again, this is why they keep returning to the scene of the crime, because it's like band-aids, trying to patch up the open wounds, but they are themselves the ones who are causing the open wounds. And at the same time, they go, no, you. Does this make sense? I hope it does. I would say, I'm not a psychologist, but I think it's on the right track, I would say. But I'm sure there would be some experts saying, well, maybe right track, but this and this isn't quite right, and so on. In my, this is enjoyable to learn through. Some people have said you start hating people because of analysis of looking at human observation. Actually, no. Some people, I think, yeah, I've never really found you too likable anyway, but didn't really care. And now I'm thinking, you're a shitbag. Some people. And whereas others, I thought, this is a really nice person. We all lie. We all have insecurities. These little quirks I do myself. That is because of my insecurities. Yeah, we all have them, whether we want to admit it or not. Doesn't matter how confident somebody looks and how efficient they are in trawling through information here and there. You will have insecurities, even if you're not aware of them anyway. Right? Hindsight is like, 20/20 vision. Insight is infinitely revealing. You can even take insight too far when you lose the other side of it, like the introspective rather than the introspective. We need the balance because one feeds the other. Too much overbalance and things can get to, you can find yourself being too predictable to yourself with too much insight. And then you become boring to yourself, whereas other people might find you interesting because your own uniqueness is different to who they are, and so on. And it's just, you need that balance. New information, when you are so obsessed with yourself, you're going to, it's like a black hole. There's no new information coming in. What have I said about certain individuals? They're incapable of learning anything new because they're playing this game with anything that comes in to threaten them, that in a way that facts and reality expose them for who they really are. So, no, I don't want to deal with that. I want my wish this to be real activity get into place. Wish this character was real and everyone can buy it. Right? And it's this vicious circle, it just goes round and round and round, and nobody wins. The player, the faker, doesn't win. The narcissist doesn't win. They just get worse and worse and worse. Other people around them getting more and more and more frustrated. Family and acquaintances and colleagues, they all lose. Until law comes around and says, yeah, I gotta lock you up for being in contempt of court, maybe, or maybe another individual was very narcissistic. He beat up his boyfriend, so he put away for that. And but there is that point where it just keeps going and going and going, getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. You think a certain individual that is crazy now. I don't know what they're going to do next, because it always surprises me even, but despite looking into this and having theories and hypotheses and ideas around this, you think they're crazy now. It's going to get worse. I don't know. I can't imagine, because I'm not an individual who's running away from myself, I guess, that, and anyone who isn't can't really imagine what they would be doing if they were that person. But we can, I think, collectively agree that they're just going to get worse and worse and worse. Gonna sneeze. No. Hate it when that happens. No. Anyway, thanks for watching. So what do you think? Am I right? Am I wrong? Am I somewhere in between? So I'll have a look at some of this subject matter of criminals returning to a scene of crime, because that's very important, because people don't think about drama online as a crime scene necessarily, but it is when individuals are using these platforms to harass a particular individual. And if you, the type of database that platforms like Facebook use means that if you're working for Facebook, your Facebook staff, it's called Meta now, isn't it? Regardless, you could log in to see every single conversation, time, day, and date, when it happened, to who it happened. These are not nothing on the internet is private anyway. It just isn't. This is why some platforms prefer to use the terminology DM, direct message, as opposed to PM, private message, because it's not private anyway, right? And yeah, there's platforms, there's software with like social networking platform software where you can have a plugin, if you're the admin of that software, to log in as that person. I've seen that done with software. And then if you're logged in as that person, because you got administrative administrative pass, whatever the word is, priorities, if you're involved with running a particular website, you can go in there and see every single conversation you've ever had with anyone else. Law has always asked, court of law and police and so on, have always asked platforms like Facebook, we need this data, and they can get it just like that. They can download all the history of stuff. And years of stuff can be recorded on servers. Depending on the size of the servers, they'll probably have a limit, but when things are in just mostly text, it's pittance. It doesn't take up. It takes like bytes of data, and they have like gigaflops of size of data storage, right? Yeah. So if you're in contempt of court by thinking that you can continue to be in contempt of court because you're deluding yourself, because you hate yourself perhaps, and you're deluding yourself that, oh, if you blag this and pretend to be this character, everyone will buy it, and people will love you, and so everything's going to be fine. You can use the court as a clout for your YouTube channel, and everything will be great, and you make money on it, and so on. If you think that, that's not based in reality. It's never going to happen. And you're fucked, because all these court of law and all this will just be able to ask what was said. When this is why emails get subpoenaed. What that means is we want all your emails, we want all your data for what you signed up to, the emails that come through. Even if you delete an email, it's still on that email server, most likely, their end. It's just deleted or ignored in your front end as the user, just because you can't see it. It's almost like blocking data your end, but your button doesn't say block this email, it says delete. So you think, oh, it's just deleted, gone forever, right? I would be willing to bet even like, you got YouTube, delete this video forever. Probably, more than likely, Google's got that video anyway. They do record and store a lot because criminal activity over the internet is on the increase. That's one reason they keep it. And many other reasons, political as well as legal and so on, to cover their own back. Yeah. I could say more, a lot more, but that is basically, in a nutshell, why you shouldn't be fucking around over the internet, harassing innocent people that at some point you know are really innocent, but now they've become something that they're actually not in your own mind because now they're the boogeyman. Why? Because they could potentially expose you where you went wrong in the first place. But you don't want to admit that. No, that's all part of the lack of maintenance that you had with your character in the first place, pretending to be this other person that you're not. Yeah. Some people will see this video and think, what the fuck did this man just say? I don't get any of it. Other people will go, oh, wow. That makes a lot of sense. And there'll be an in-between, because it is baffling and complicated and weird. Human nature is bizarre. It really is. And it's like, sometimes I feel ashamed to be part of the human race. Other times I think, wow, we're fascinating and kind of happy to be part of the human race. And that goes backwards and back and forth a lot. My heart sank when Trump won the election. And that's those times where I think, oh, he's sake. It's just very ashamed to be part of the human race, those moments. Anyway, I kind of said goodbye already, but I'm saying it again and actually going now. You take care. I'll look forward to doing another video soon. Have a great day.